Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined by my Action Network co-host Christian Odjakjian and our man Duck, aka Josh Nunn. You can call him Duck, you can call him Josh. Just make sure that you're hitting him up over on Twitter with those handshake emojis because he's been cashing a lot of picks here throughout the college hoop season. Guys, how are we feeling at this point? Because I think college basketball is starting to peak, and I mean that in the absolute best way possible. It feels like every single week we're having like a game of the year vibe. You're getting wild games like UMass, Coastal Carolina, where people are making shots. You're getting heavyweight fights. I feel like a lot of the major power conferences have been backloaded in terms of some of these setups and some of these critical matchups. It's been phenomenal. It's a sport where Iowa State can lose to TCU, turn around, beat Kansas, then get into a 15 round bout with Houston. Like, just all of it is kind of overflowing with how great the product is on the floor. And then off the floor, we're going to get into some coaches being some real pricks and some people arguing with the media, arguing with their own team, throwing players out of their own game. Like, college basketball is getting testy, and I think the pressure is bringing out the best in this sport. And we haven't even made it to March yet. So I'll go to you first, Christian. Is there anything in particular right now, high level, that you are focused in on? Player, coach, theme, conference title race, anything like that at this point in the season?
Well, real quick, the fact that we're getting Michigan, Duke, and Houston, Arizona, even though Arizona's a little, missing two of the top eight guys, is just nuts. These four teams all were plus 750 or better to win the title last time I checked a couple days ago. So, like, we're really getting a Final Four sneak peek on Saturday, the same day we're getting the top 16 teams of the tournament announced. So fun times around the corner.
Duck, question for you. I know that you have stood up for Doug Gottlieb. You're basically a man on an island in that regard. But let's just talk brass tacks. They got a winning record in the horizon this year. It looks like they've kind of embodied a bit of his toughness and his edge as the season's gone on. His tenure did not get off to a great start. It seemed like he was a media member pretending to be a coach, but now it seems like he's shown at least that he deserves to be at this level of basketball. And then you have the rant over the weekend that was absolutely legendary, going off about getting the technical, ripping up the refs, but I would argue in an ethical way, in a straightforward way. And then it comes down today that he's suspended for a game. What are your thoughts on that situation from the Horizon Commissioner's office all the way down to Gottlieb there in Green Bay?
I mean, I don't think that the comments warranted a suspension. I thought he was fiery. I thought that he spoke with passion. First of all, talking about the job, Doug Gottlieb has done an insane job with the Green Bay Phoenix in year two of his tenure. I mean, this is a very competent basketball team. They're very good on the offensive end. They play a ton of guys. They have multiple contributors that can really step up at any one point in time. And uh, Gottlieb has kind of formed this team into a real competitive out in the Horizon League. Now, going back to the rant, they had a real important game in the Horizon League standings with University of Milwaukee and couldn't get it done. But what he said afterwards was just talking about some similar action on both sides of the floor where you have people battling in the post, and Green Bay was getting fouls that were called against them. And then very similar activity would come about on the other end, and we wouldn't get the whistle, according to Gottlieb. And so, if you go back and review some of that action and see what he was talking about, I can understand that the guy is really bought in. He quit his radio show. He's trying to eliminate some of the outside distractions to really lock in with this unit. And he cares about his guys. He cares about the job that he's doing. He just wants a game to be called fairly. And I kind of understand the gripe. I want a coach to be my biggest advocate as a player and our team's biggest advocate. You want these coaches to care. And Doug Gottlieb genuinely does care. And I really respect that about what he's doing. I'd be pissed off too. It was absurd, some of the action that was called or not called against the Phoenix.
Yeah, I think it was 90% correct. Absolutely, he did not deserve to be suspended. I was telling Duck before we recorded, I went back to the Watch ESPN app, which for some reason was actually working today, which was a nice surprise. Went back, watched the full replay. He had basically time stamped out the calls that he thought were questionable. I think he's right. I think, in totality, when you look at it, if there's eight or nine coin flips and they all go the way of Milwaukee in that game, it was the difference maker there. But he never questioned the ethics or that the referees compromised the game or that they were incompetent. He was just pointing to specifics. The only thing that I'll bristle at a little bit, and this is kind of unique to basketball as opposed to some other sports, but he did say that the ref that teched him up basically stayed away from him in the last 6.5 minutes of that game. What else do you want him to do? Do you want him to like get into more of a confrontation with you and then double tee you up and then send you home? Like, I think that's kind of reasonable. Like, in reality, I don't think that referees should be in constant communication with coaches. As a gambler, as a fan, I just want them to call the game to the best of their ability. I don't need this kind of constant whisper down the lane. Here's what I was thinking, or you didn't see this, or he actually had position. It's like, just call the game, you know? And the other element of it is when you allow that constant thread of communication, the really good coaches in this sport grease the referees, they work them, they end up getting a call or two. Like, they're playing kind of macho head games, and it makes a difference. There's a reason why certain teams always seem to get certain calls, and usually it's tied to the gravitas of the coach, but also just how you are as a communicator, using, you know, the carrot and the whip at the same time. Like, I would just prefer to see the refs, you know, be answerable after the game as opposed to in game just to the coach in a private conversation. Like, I think we can all agree that it would be better, even if it was just bumped up to like a conference commissioner being answerable to, you know, some of these critiques, and to say that we blew this call or we're looking at this, or be more transparent in terms of, you know, how referees are earning their keep to be able to get to conference tournament play, or, you know, whatever it is to get kicked up to March Madness, how they're grading them out. Any kind of transparency, I think, would help. But I do think it's a slippery slope to feel like you have to constantly communicate with the coaches, you know, up and down throughout the night. I mean, do you agree with that, Duck, or is this totally one-sided in your
Well,
opinion?
real quick, did Doug get his question answered? What he did wrong to get the tech?
He did not. He didn't get it from the referees that night, and he didn't get it from the conference
If you're
office.
gonna give him a suspension, like at least I hope on the side, at least privately, there was something addressed. Like, look, we have to suspend you because of all the buzz this got, but like, here's the answer to your question, because to me it was extremely valid. He's like, I didn't do the things that if you do, you get a tech, and I got a tech. You know, like I deserve an answer.
I think it's kind of like an old school Bookie Cousins situation where it's like he's kind of got a grating personality. He could be right in that he didn't curse, he didn't do anything demonstrative, he didn't put his hands on anybody. Sure, but it's sometimes over the course of a season you earn a reputation. Fair or not? I think in most cases it's not fair. I watched enough NBA games where Boogie would do, you know, he would get a soft foul and turn to the ref, immediately get teed up. It was just like the refs also have these egos that get lost in the situation because the conferences find it to be preferable where they're essentially nameless, where it's just like you don't even know who these guys are. They're kind of rotating in and out, and that's fine. But that's not the case. It's clear that something agitated the ref so much to be able to tee him up in the spot. Any final thoughts, Duck?
I mean, I think he deserves an explanation when Gottlieb, as part of that rant, goes through the three different elements that generally trigger a technical foul, and he didn't do any of that. I would want an explanation. And truly, I think I agree with your sentiment for the most part, but I think that the referees need to be accountable to blatantly missed calls or teeing somebody up. You've got to give a guy a reason why that happens. It's akin to a baseball umpire throwing somebody out and just refusing to communicate with that person, and you never hear why he was thrown out. He looked at him the wrong way, he spit on the ground the wrong way. What was it? Like, give me something as to why I'm being disciplined here.
Some breaking news: JT Toppin, ACL injury, out for the season. I just want to get your quick thoughts on this. Texas Tech's drawn dead without him. He was, you know, somebody who I know that Boozer's running away with the National Player of the Year awards, but he was certainly in an All-American conversation, at least second team. And they just don't have a player of that magnitude able to fill his shoes this year. A sad time for the fans in Northwest Texas. Any thoughts on how this could impact Texas Tech down the stretch? Is there anything that McCausland can do in terms of maybe slowing down tempo, trying to be a bit more defensive as he was in previous seasons, as opposed to playing a bit more up tempo? Christian, do you think there's any way that they can salvage this, or has this now become a lost year for the Red Raiders?
I'm sniffling because I'm sick, but I am also actually very emotionally devastated by this because Texas Tech is one of my favorite teams in the country to watch. I think McCaslin's a top 5 coach in the country. I don't even think that's a spicy take. Like the way that he maximizes his roster, they have a chance to beat anybody with. I mean, I have to use past tense now because of how good that 2-man game is, the buy-in they get from everyone, the role allocation, and how hard they play. It doesn't work without JT Toppin. I think to even win a tournament game would be a huge accomplishment without JT Toppin. But he was the second best player in the country this season behind just Boozer, in my opinion. Really sucks, but don't be surprised if the oil boys down in Lubbock break out $6 million and give it to Toppin to make him come back for next year.
Any thoughts, Duck?
I think it's a disaster for Texas Tech. I mean, we've talked about Texas Tech all season, and we thought their defense was great, but maybe not championship level defense, that they played really well during stretches, and at other times they couldn't stop a nosebleed. And the offense was relied upon so many times to dig Texas Tech out of holes. And we saw even with Toppin, there were several game stretches where Texas Tech's offense faded badly in the final 3 minutes, and it cost them directly in the win-loss column. Now you factor Toppin out of the equation with a defense that is not Arizona's defense, it's not Houston's defense, it's not Duke's defense. And now you take him out, and on the offensive end, they just get affected that much more adversely. I'm sorry to say, but I think it's trouble in Lubbock.
Before I get to my Mick Cronin rant, which I'm very excited to give, I just want a bit of positivity here. And I'm going to start it out with a quote from Admiral David Glasgow Farragut, and that is, "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, Duck. Why are the Navy midshipmen a potential Cinderella darling, in your opinion?"
I mean, it's been since 1998 that the Middies have played in the NCAA tournament, and Navy has had previous opportunities in the Patriot League tournament, and they've never been able to get over the hump. Well, these guys, they have so much continuity together. This is the strongest Navy team we've seen in 25 years. And as of now, they have firm control over the Patriot League. They are so much better than everybody else in this league, and they're dangerously talented. Their offense features an exquisite inside-outside game with Austin Benini and Aiden Kehoe. But there's so many other contributors for Navy. You got Mike Woods, Jinwoo Kim, Donovan Draper that are consistent scorers. They play sound defensive basketball. Navy does not make mistakes. But just looking at their defense, the Middies rank first in the Patriot League in defensive efficiency, field goal percentage allowed, free throw avoidance, blocks, and steals. This is such a dangerous team. They do play at a slow pace, which can keep them in a game against a superior opponent, but they do not turn the ball over. They can force some pressure on the ball. If Navy wins out and if they win the Patriot League, something that's been a problem for them in the past, but if they do that, right now they're slotted at the 15 spot, and that would be tough to go up against a team like Houston or Duke or one of those other premier slotted two seeds. But if they can get to a 14, this can be a real problem team for somebody in the NCAA tournament. Navy leads the country in minutes consistency. They're upperclassmen led, a roster that's full of seniors and juniors. There's a lot of experience, but it's just so incredible to watch these guys play together. It's really a situation where the sum is greater, or the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And Navy is a really fun team to watch in the Patriot League.
Yeah, for the better part of like 8 straight years, you had to go to Hamilton, New York. You had to win on Colgate's home floor, and they were just absolutely the class of the Patriot League. They've fallen way back to earth the last 2 years. So I agree with you. It's kind of Navy's to lose at this point, and I'm hoping they get there. This is the time of year when it's pretty clear in most of the low major conferences that there is one team that is a cut above, and we want those teams making the field of 68. It's fun to have a Cinderella story, but you want to have a Cinderella that actually has a chance to break through and win a game in the first round. And I think Navy is clearly the only shot that the Patriot League has. All right, I'm going to jump in to Mick Cronin. I was worried coming off a college football season there's going to be a power vacuum here at BBOC after Trent Dilfer was unceremoniously shit-canned by UAB. And I was thinking to myself, like, I really need another coach that I can both fade and hate on and root for their downfall. And Mick Cronin's always been fun to hate on, more emphasis on the fun. Because, I mean, for a long stretch, he had really tough teams at Cincinnati that were fun to watch. He was like, this little leprechaun on the sideline jumping up and down and being demonstrative. And, like, it was funny when he'd have his post-game pressers and kind of complain about things. But the last 2.5 years, he's 56-37. He's been bounced from the big dance by a lower seed in 4 of his last 7 trips, and he's only won on the second weekend of March Madness once his entire career. That's when, in that weird post-COVID year where he took UCLA to the Final Four. That's 15 trips to the NCAA tournament, and only one time has he won on the second weekend. So I think it doesn't match up. He's a medium-sized winner with a maximum-sized contract. He makes, with incentives and bonuses and everything, about $5 million a year. But all he does, being in a blue blood with enough money to go in the portal and get him a player like Donovan Dent, who was the third-rated player in last year's portal per Evan Mia. All he does with all of that goodwill, that money, being able to recruit to Southern California, all these things, he just complains. He's a whiner. He's a finger pointer. He throws a pity party anytime they have to get on an airplane. They travel at a top 5 rate in terms of conference travel. but he complains incessantly about it. It's been the same thing for years now. And Cal and Stanford, by the way, have to travel more because they're in the ACC. But I don't seem to hear from Mark Madsen or Kyle Smith getting up on their soapbox complaining about it every week. And they're on the wrong side of the bubble. UCLA still controls their destiny and can certainly go to the big dance. But backing up, Cronin one trick pony in terms of being snarky, being bitter, playing the "I live in a suitcase" card at all times. That was until last night when he absolutely lost his goddamn mind and threw his own player out of the game. And I want to hear from you guys on this. It was a hard foul. I think it warranted a flagrant one, but it wasn't something where it was malicious, where he came and just dropped a hammer on the guy's head. He still hit the ball. He's playing hard. And this is what Cronin talks about all the time. We got fake tough guys on this team. You're the ultimate fake tough guy, throwing your own guy out of the game for busting his ass down the floor, trying to make a play in a game that you were already out of. That shows to me, not a willingness to just roll over and just take a loss. And honestly, like your job, your job is one of the best in the world at this price point. You get all the joy and the accolades and building relationships and being, adored in your community when you win, when you go to the Final Four, all these things, and you get paid an insane amount of money to do it. But your real job is when the chips are down and it's a harder day to handle yourself with class and professionalism. I take this one seriously. This is ridiculous. If you were in corporate America and you talked to the reporter the way that he did last night, it's not just a bad look. It's like you'd be fired. Like he's an absolute coward. He bullies the guy right from the jump. Like you can argue that it's kind of a silly question asking an opposing coach about a student section. He's clearly not focused on that. It's one of the easiest things in the world to deflect. You have media training, Mick. You can just say, "No, we don't think about it," or "Everywhere we play in the Big Ten is difficult," or you can even say, if you're really upset and you're having a bad week, you can say, "That's a dumb question. No, I don't think about it. I don't give a rat's ass." You can keep that whole soundbite. But then you move on. You don't continue to push on this guy and push and push. It was the worst question. Yeah, you should take it as a compliment. Basically telling him to shut the F up. And then when the guy has the temerity to reframe the question to explain why he's doing it, turning to him and saying, "Are you yelling at me? That's so inappropriate. You're caught on camera." There's nothing more frustrating, and this is for everyone listening in the audience. If you ever had your wife turn to you and say, "Don't yell at me," and you're not yelling, that's the easiest way to go from 0 to 100 because you're put in a box immediately. You can't get angrier at that point. And the difference is, like, at least in a marriage, you, in theory, should be on equal footing. In this situation, the power dynamic is so insane. You got a guy making $5 million who's a media darling, or at least has a spotlight on him, next to a guy who's probably making 35K a year, who's getting forced to ask these questions by his editor, who's trying to get a quote, who also has to play this game where he has to kiss the ass of the players and the coaches, otherwise he loses access. Yeah, you're such a tough guy, Mick. Oh yeah, but absolutely, just dunk on this guy. You're so cool. I am so frustrated for the reporter. I've never had secondhand frustration to this level. You're soft as baby shit, Mick. And I've had it with this guy. I cannot wait for this team to lose in March Madness. I hope the committee puts him on a goddamn plane and sends him to Buffalo, New York, or Tampa, because they're going to lose the same way they've lost on the road this entire year. This entire year on the road in Big Ten play, they've lost by an average of 17 points per game. I cannot wait for them to take an L straight up and against the spread. I'm going to fade this guy until the wheels fall off. I've had enough of you, Mick. But also, in a weird way, I'm glad you're a part of college basketball because it brings out these emotions. And I don't get to hate watch people all that often. And there's not that many people that are, a convenient ATM when it comes to betting against them on the road. You were that guy. Guys, feel free to jump in. I know that I don't want to hog all this Mick spotlight because he basically was the number one person on the internet today after going viral last night.
Yeah,
I thought, frankly, it was
Go ahead.
embarrassing content. I thought that Mick behaved so childish in the game situation where he throws his own player out of the arena, and then afterwards, when berating the reporter and continuing to just press and press and press on this. This guy has not been a head coach for just 6 months, and this is his first season interacting with media. He's been around the ring so many times in his career, which spans what I mean 20 years now, and to treat another person this way when this guy, like you said, Mike, is just asking a simple question. It is the easiest question in the world to deflect. We weren't focused on that, or yeah, it didn't factor for us, or anything else, and then just bury it and move on. But he really went after that young reporter, and that was really sad to see. I thought it was frankly, it was embarrassing.
Yeah, one ironic note, I think when Adai Mara decided to transfer to Michigan, I was like, wow, he really went from the angriest, most intense, old school, whatever you want to call it, in terms of the way he speaks with and interacts with his players and approaches coaching, to Dusty May, who's like kind of, in my opinion, the poster child of this next wave of not coaching like that and being like psychologically in tune and stuff. And for Adai Mara to go at Mackey and put up a double-double and play a great game, and not only that, have a great season when Mick Cronin got nothing out of him for 2 years, basically. For Mick, who has a great team, I really like the personnel in this UCLA team. I think they have no excuse to not be a better team. It's on him, and I've given him the benefit of the doubt in the past couple of years. Like when 2 years ago they had that season where they missed the tournament, and he was starting to become the press conference guy who was just always angry, always complaining. That was the last year, the Pac-12. That was when everything started to turn. And I will say the one I kind of just cut myself off there, but I guess what I'm saying is that was when it started to turn. Of like, I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt of, oh, but his players love him. Oh, but he's a winner. Now you're not winning. I don't know how your players can love you when you do something absurd like throwing Jamerson out, which did not look like a malicious play. I agree with you. There's a photo of, and it's like, sure, it's a runaway. You're down big. You don't need to even try, but like, it was not a malicious. We've seen way worse fouls this year. But yeah, I guess the one concession I'll give him is when he joined UCLA to do this job, like he comes there during COVID, takes in the Final Four in the second year. He didn't think he was going to have to go to the Big Ten and do all this travel stuff. So I understand him being upset that this job in college basketball hadn't become what it was. But then maybe it's time to move on, right? Maybe the game has passed him a bit. If he can't control his anger, the way that he coached at Cincinnati and the way that he coached at the beginning of his tenure at UCLA, the way he coached back at Murray State, like that's not really the way it is right now. And I think it's a really bad look of him. And for him to continue to act like it's okay because of his results, like I don't think we live in a different world. Like, I just don't think it is okay really the same way anymore.
He can leave. There's nothing stop. People break contracts all the time. You don't want to, travel all that far. Go coach in the NEC for all I care. Like this idea that it's impossible and that no one can make it work. It's like, I think it's just a mindset. I think he's absolutely entitled and spoiled, and he gets paid way more money than he has delivered. Like, you can talk all about, his win percentage and, the consistency of generally how he plays in conference and everything else. But this job and legacies all come down to March Madness. And whether you're Bobby Knight or Jim Boeheim or Coach K, they all had their moments where they're prickly with the press or they kind of had a God complex. The difference is you got to cut down the nets. You got to win the national championship. You got to go to multiple Final Fours to get away with being this much of a dickhead. And like college sports has been filled with him. Urban Meyer, jerk. I think even Urban Meyer would agree with that. But it's like, I win. Like, you get certain allowances and you get more buy-in from your players if you were a winner. And he does not win enough to be this big of a dick. So that's it for the rant. Let's get into why everyone is here. But first, don't miss out on any of the best bets we're about to give out by signing up for Action Pro. Action Pro gets real-time alerts to every single subscriber as soon as experts like Stucky, Duck, Christian, myself, any of us track bets in the app. So you're going to get the best bets critically at the best prices. You also get real-time money percentages to see where the smart money is flowing and access to player projections powered by Sean Kerner and his predictive analytics team. Dr. Nick is going to bring all of his college basketball player props to the table as well, which you can take advantage of now all the way through the end of March Madness. Right now, you can get $20 off an annual subscription of Action Pro. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro and use promo code POD20 to get started. That's promo code POD20 for $20 off at actionnetwork.com/pro. All right, all of the bad blood, the excitement, everything, the 40,000-foot view of college hoops, we'll put that aside. I'm hoping that you're here for the picks. And as a reminder, we got some merch. We got some, futures tickets to give out. Duck has a 5-star review winner to discuss as well. And my offer is still on the table. If anyone sweeps, they're going to get a little prize pack from Home Field. Not a sponsor, but could be. Home Field has some great stuff, particularly in the college basketball market. All right, Duck, take it away.
Yeah, we'll go to the review winner. Telestar1 left us a review, says the Big Bets on Campus podcast is excellent. The guys have been doing a really outstanding job with the Wednesday breakdowns. What they do really well is explain why they're breaking down a side or total and why they like it. It's makes it a lot easier for you. Great work, gentlemen. So we're going to give Telestar1 a $50 future, whatever he wants. It can be a parlay, it can be a conference future, it can be a natty future. So Telestar1, drop us a line on Twitter and we'll make sure that we'll get that in for you. But thanks again for the kind words. And for anyone else listening in, like, share, subscribe, hit the review button, give us a 5-star review. Really helps us out.
All right, we're going to stop yelling. We're going to lean in. We're going to use our indoor voice just in case Mick is listening. Duck, talk to me about Arkansas Little Rock and UT Martin and a projected total on Thursday.
Yeah, so the total is projected about 135 and a half. UT Martin's on their fourth game in 7 days, and they just lost 56 to 53 at home in overtime to SEMO. I would expect these guys to be a little slow and maybe a little out of gas here, maybe some tired legs and some short jumpers in the first half. This is, however, the premier defense in the Ohio Valley Conference, and it has held its opponents to 64 points or less in 13 conference games this season. When you look at UT Martin, per the metrics, they are stunning on defense. 2-point shooting, 3-point shooting, blocks and altered shots, steals, turnovers, effective field goal percentage, and efficiency, all the best in the Ohio Valley Conference for UT Martin. And they play considerably at the slowest pace in the conference. I look at UALR, they have slowed the tempo offensively over the last 7 games, and the defense has actually played a little bit better for Little Rock of late. This is a venue that UT Martin has struggled with every time it's been here, and I think we'll see a repeat of that, a game that really mirrors the first between these two. That game ended 55 to 52, played at just 62 total possessions. I do not anticipate any more than that here. This should be a slow burning grinder if there ever was one. So with a projected total of 135 and a half, I'm going in on the under.
Let's stick on Thursday in the CAA. College of Charleston traveling to North Carolina A&T. At times, NCAT has popped off and they've played games in the 90s and been really up and down. College of Charleston, by the way, I don't know if anyone's seen it on social media when they anonymously poll coaches. What's the best job in low major, mid major basketball? COC is the best job in the CAA. They have the financial resources, they have the community buy-in, they have the facilities, everything. But it's still difficult to necessarily take that show on the road, shoot at the same level, have the same kind of efficiency. What are you expecting in this Thursday night one out of the CAA?
Well, really, what it comes down to for Charleston is they've struggled offensively since their second leading scorer, Connor Hickman, was ruled ineligible for the rest of the season. Without him in 3 games, 64 points against UNCW, 62 against Hofstra, and 62 against Campbell, all while slowing the tempo significantly. Charleston started the season playing slow tempo. They kind of scrapped that and went back to what they had run before, which was more of a high octane up-tempo scheme. Well, they've completely reverted back to a slower tempo. And then I look at North Carolina A&T, they have also slowed their tempo down significantly from the start of the season as this offense for NCAT is just in such disarray. And Charleston has a much better defense than people realize. I would anticipate that North Carolina A&T struggles to procure paint touches or trips to the foul line. This is a bad shooting team that cannot be relied upon to make shots. I think it's a defensive first game with a slower pace than the 71 possessions that we saw in the first meeting. I project about 67 total possessions, and I just don't think the books have caught up to how badly College of Charleston is struggling offensively right now. Charleston should win this game. First meeting had 140 total points. I think that's what we'll see here. With a projected total of 148 and a half, we're going under.
All right, let's stick on Thursday. I talked 2 weeks ago about Utah Valley now ineligible for the WAC conference championship game, cannot go to March Madness. What does that do to a team psychologically? We ended up hopping right in, taking Abilene Christian plus 13.5. They win by the hook. I'm going right back to it. I like Cal Baptist plus 7 or better here on the road. A big part of this is that I want teams that can win on the road that aren't necessarily dependent on knocking down perimeter shots, that can get offensive rebounds and can play really good defense. The Lancers are the top rated defense in the WAC. They got the player of the year in the WAC and point guard Dominique Daniels. And as I said, the offensive rebounding is maybe the best in all of low major hoops. They're top 10 in a few of those metrics there. So a lower scoring game, you don't need the threes to fall. And if they're not hitting their jumpers, I still see them grabbing 12 to 15 offensive boards in this one. And Daniels can always play hero ball, by the way. He scored 61 points in his last 2 games, and he cooked Utah Valley on his home floor in an outright win, scoring 47 points in their first meeting, a win in overtime. So I look at this, both of them recently lost by less than 2 possessions against Utah Tech. I think they're very close in terms of the comps. So, like I said, anything above 2 possessions, I'm hoping to get 7.5 or 8 in this one. But I just think this is an opportunity for a Utah Valley team that's going to lose focus and lose steam a little bit, whereas Cal Baptist has an opportunity and an inside track to the #1 seed in the WAC conference tournament if they win this one, because the schedule really lightens up at the end of the year for the Lancers. All right, Christian, let's hop to a game on Friday. We're looking at Indiana at Purdue. I like the Boilermakers laying the points, but first talk to me about a player prop that you've been red hot on. Really, player props you've been bringing to the table the last 2 weeks have all been cashing.
Yeah, the player process have been fun. I agree that Purdue's going to get this done. I just don't know how much the tax is going to be on that number. It's probably going to be 3 or 4 points more than KenPom. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that gets up to like 12 or 13. Anyways, Trakoff and Wren has been hooping. Michigan's approach last night was go get an inefficient 30 points TKR. Like, we're going to stay home on the shooters. But another thing was Purdue, when they played Indiana and lost at Assembly Hall, they rode TKR on that one. He had 23 points, took 14 shots, went only 5 of 10 from the line. But the big thing that stands out to me is Matt Painter set up to the game, like, and he said this other times too, like, going small with TKR at the 5 was their best option, because Clough has really struggled lately, honestly, and Jacobson hasn't been great either. Like, they're still gonna rock with having one of those guys out there most of the time, but down the stretch when they made the comeback against Indiana from, I think they were down as much as 15, and they made it a 1 possession game late, it was riding TKR and it was playing small. So I think we'll probably get a line around 19.5, and I think TKR, I think it's a monster game. I think he scores 25 or more. And an Indiana front court that also in a game where they beat Oregon by 20, Nate Biddle had 15, took 14 shots, took 13 free throws. With guys like Reed Bailey and Tucker DeVries was guarding TKR in that game. So I just think TKR will feast.
I agree with your assessment, Christian. I think it's going to be probably Purdue minus 12.5. Mackey's going to be on fire for this one. They're coming off a humbling loss to Michigan, where they made it a little bit closer in the second half, but they weren't really in a position to threaten the Wolverines at all down the stretch. They lose at Assembly Hall to the Hoosiers earlier this year. This is a spot, I think, for Purdue to play their best basketball. And Indiana, by the way, on the road, lost by 20 to Illinois, 14 at Michigan, 21 at Michigan State, 9 at Minnesota. You can beat them up and cover big numbers when they're taking their show on the road. Matt Painter, also, I had this one circled, one of the best coaches in America against the spread coming off a loss. Since he started at Purdue in 2005, he's covered 56% of the time, which is the 7th best rate among power conference teams in the past 21 years. So he's always cooking at home in West Lafayette. And perhaps the Boilermakers are due for a little 3-point regression from their opponents. Recent games against Michigan and Nebraska, those two teams shot a combined 46% from three. The Hoosiers also made 12 triples in their first meeting. So I think a little regression could go a long way in terms of a run out here for a big Purdue victory. All right, back to you, Duck. Let's go to Saturday. Maryland Eastern Shore, Coppin State, another game that is at the bottom of the board, but potentially has a ton of value in your opinion.
Yeah, it's a grotesque game, but with a projected total of 133 and a half, you have two offenses that rank 350th and 361st nationally in offensive efficiency, and Eastern Shore is bottom 5 nationally in operating tempo. The first matchup saw Maryland Eastern Shore win a 70-67 game that had these two awful foul shooting teams, by the way, combined to make 38 out of 40 from the foul line. And it was a second half that saw 47 points in the final 10 minutes. The game was trending under, and it became a foul fest where really just neither team was able to miss foul shots. We have not seen foul shooting percentages from either one of those two teams that have come anywhere close to what we saw in this first game. Beyond that, Coppin State has completely changed the way that these guys are playing, both their offensive style and their pace the last 4 games. The Eagles had started to try to play some up tempo and shake some things up, but they have completely reverted back the other way, and they're playing slow pace grinders. Head coach Larry Stewart has just completely reverted back to a slower system. The result has been scores of 65-47 against Delaware State, 58-56 against North Carolina Central, and earlier this week, 59-57 against South Carolina State. Maryland Eastern Shore wants this game in the low 60s, and this might be played at 58 or 59 total possessions. Both of these teams want to play a very slow game. Neither one of these teams is going to shoot very well. If we see 40 foul attempts, I will bet that 38 of them do not go in this time around. With a projected total of 133.5, has to be an under. I think both these teams could be in the 50s.
All right, let's turn to the Big 12, Christian, looking at Arizona and Houston. I always chuckle. Somebody posted casual fans tuning in for Iowa State, Houston, excited about some high-end basketball, and it's just a video of that hybrid sport where it's like rugby and basketball at the same time, and they're slamming into each other. Do you think that Houston's going to be able to impose their tempo a little bit slower, definitely more physical against a shorthanded Arizona team? And if so, how does that impact the total in your opinion?
Yeah, so KenPom has that 143. The reason I'm looking under is, well, let's go back to last year when these two teams played. They played twice last year. It was 72-64 and a 62-58 game. Arizona's best when they're running, 26th nationally in tempo, and Houston wants to play a half court game. They're 355th. If I'm to guess who is more likely to enforce their tempo, one, I'm leaning towards the home team in Houston, but two, Houston doesn't turn it over. So you don't turn it over. I do think Arizona is going to be able to keep Houston off the offensive glass because, you have Waka, you have Krivas, no Pete, Hurts. I think there is a world where Houston just kind of hoops and wins this game by double digits, and that's the reason it goes over because Houston just outplays them. But I'm not, panicking on Arizona just because they lost a couple games or because they're missing Pete and Aristode. Like, this is still a elite basketball team. I just think it's going to be slow and gritty and grimy. And I think Houston wins this game in the 60s, and I don't even know if Arizona hits 60. I think it could be tough for them.
All right, let's hop back in time to Friday night, another MAC basketball game. I love the Mid-Americans TV structure where they're trying to put some of their best games on Friday night to get a national audience. You have a team that's still undefeated in Miami of Ohio hosting Bowling Green, but lost in this undefeated storyline for the Redhawks is that they've been an absolute ATM in terms of totals, cashing overs at the seventh highest rate in all of college basketball, over 70% cash rate. And now Bowling Green comes into town. They're on the opposite side of the spectrum. 70% of their games have cashed the under. The thing, though, is they have average tempo and a top 100 defense per KenPom. So it makes sense that this number is probably going to settle in the mid 150s. I'm hoping a little bit closer to 153, but I play it up to 155. And here's the reason. When Bowling Green has been sped up this year against Akron, UMass, Kent, Miami of Ohio, Javante Campbell has just decided to get in his bag and just fire up as many shots as possible. He's got a full-on green light. Against Akron, UMass, and Kent, he averaged 27 points per game on 15 shots per game. But here's the crazy stat in terms of his overall aggressiveness. In those games against the up-tempo teams from the MAC, he's averaged 15 foul shots per game out of a guard. So you can see just how much he can impact the game by putting it on the deck, putting his head down, and getting to the foul line. Now, when they went up against Miami in their first matchup, that round one, 176 total points. They overcashed with ease, and Campbell was an efficient 7 for 11 from the field. I think Miami has no reason whatsoever to slow this one down. They have all the shooters everywhere. They're playing with increased confidence. I thought there was an opportunity to snipe them with UMass on the money line and over earlier in the week. That one didn't materialize, but it did go over. So I think this continues to be, Miami's world. Everyone's just, trying to go to the deep end of the pool with them and keep up in terms of scoring, and it's not working out. And I just don't think Bowling Green has the patience or the privilege of being able to say, we're going to slow things down a little bit, play at our pace, because all of a sudden they're going to be down by 10, 15 points in this game. So they're going to have to play catch up, and they're going to have to play faster. So I'm going to go over any number below 155 and a half, let's call it. All right, Christian, going to throw it back to you for Saturday, looking at an SEC matchup between Kentucky and Auburn. Earlier in the year, I feel like, most of the national media, casual fans, they made up their mind on Mark Pope and this UK team. They continually got out of the gate slow. They're playing some uninspired basketball in the first half. They were an interesting play, against the spread and live numbers in the second half. But it seems to me that this Kentucky team has been a bit Jekyll and Hyde, and the market just hasn't been able to get its arms around them effectively. If they're catching north of a single possession here, do you think that's the value play against Auburn on the Plains?
Yes, I do. And Kentucky was on my do not bet list ever since that Michigan State game at the Champions Classic. I was so disappointed in that product. And then I hammered them I hammered Gonzaga when they beat them. And then I was on Indiana when Kentucky finally got their bearings and won that one at home. but they've been impossible to predict. They've just been a team that I've just been staying away from, even in spots where I didn't like them. The one I regret is I should have taken Vanderbilt when they hosted them. Anyways, Kentucky's coming off these two losses. You lose at home to Georgia, you lose at Florida, but I like the way they played against Florida. You only lost by 9. Florida is up to 6th in KenPom. They're the clear best team in the SEC, but it's a little bit a bit more about Auburn. Auburn's lost 4 in a row. I think they'll win at Mississippi State tonight. But Keyshawn Hall is like in the doghouse. Like, I don't know if he's going to play the rest of the year. I've heard some intel there of just that just not being a good situation with just him and the coaching staff. So without him, it's all Tahad Pettiford in a high usage role. He had 29 and 7 against Arkansas, which looks good on paper, but I mean, it's in 38 minutes, like trying to create everything. And Keyshawn Murphy gives you 22. And I like Keyshawn Murphy, but he's not a guy that I really want as like a high usage player. So Kentucky just has so many guys. They're very talented. And because of this season filled with adversity, right, they've never lost 3 in a row. And I don't see them doing that in this spot against an Auburn team that's sliding. And personnel wise, like Kentucky just has a much deeper team. And if they can make, if Pettiford and Murphy, like if they go for like 25 each again, like they did in Arkansas, I still don't even know if it's enough. Like they need guys like Jovic to step up big. I feel bad for Stephen Pearl. I don't think a lot of this is his fault. I think people are being a little hard on him. I don't think the team was constructed great, and I don't think the transition of powers was done well. But all this to say, Kentucky, I'm betting them for the first time since November. I'm taking them to win outright against Auburn.
Now, before we get out of here, we're going to run through our best bets from the show, our favorite play here at midweek. Duck, you're hitting us up with something new. Talk to me about a team total.
Yeah, we're going to go to Oregon State hosting Pepperdine over the weekend. Pepperdine is 2-12 in league play, and the Waves have completely quit playing defense. This was a defense that held Stephen F. Austin to 63, Vermont to 65. They had played a little bit of defense earlier on in the season, and Pepperdine had also played through the first half of the season at one of the slower tempos in the West Coast Conference. But all that's been thrown out the window. There's very little defensive effort. Its last 7 games, Pepperdine has surrendered 84, 95, 92, 83, 92, 88, and 89 points in its last 7 games. This is by far the worst defense in the West Coast Conference. They cannot defend any inside-outside action. There's a real lack of post presence. Oregon State has been so much more aggressive in getting paint touches for Isaiah Sy, Johan Munch, Yak Yak, and the Beavers are going to shred Pepperdine on the interior. This is the last Saturday home game of the season for Oregon State, and its best chance remaining to get a win at home. You talk about points in the paint. Oregon State might have 50 or more in this game. Their team total is projected at 75. I like the full game over, but I really like Oregon State's team total to go over 75 here.
I'm going to stick with Cal Baptist. I'm hoping to get 7 or more in this one at Utah Valley. They beat them in the first meeting. They got the player of the year in Dominique Daniels. They got the best defense in the WAC, and they have absolute monsters crashing the glass, getting them 12 to 15 offensive rebounds in this one. I think this will be a one-possession game one way or the other against a Utah Valley team that is drawing dead, can't play in the postseason tournament, can't go to the big dance. I think emotionally it's going to get more and more difficult for them to get up for games down the stretch. All right, Christian, close us out here with your favorite addition to our best bets.
I'm going to throw TKR back in there. Just as you said, the player props have been my bread and butter. They've been treating me well, and this is one I feel really good about it. I'd even consider a combo of points, rebounds, or points, rebounds, assists just to concentrate the bet on him being extremely productive.
That'll do it for this episode of the Big Bets on Campus podcast. My special thanks to Mick Cronin for firing me up. Who needs a cup of coffee when you can listen to a rant from that asshole? Special thanks to Duck as well and my other co-host Christian. Don't miss the BBOC weekend preview every Saturday with Stuckey. Myself, Greg Waddell, Christian, Duck is on the episodes as well. So that goes live at 10:30 a.m. Eastern on YouTube. Also, the weekend preview podcast forum comes out on Friday with Stuckey, Greg, and Jim Root. There's also the Three Man Weaves earlier week preview on Monday mornings. Be sure to subscribe and to like the podcast and rate and review it with 5 stars. Any chance that you get, you don't want to miss anything. As always, best of luck with all your bets, and we'll see you at the window.